Right, hi everyone, good morning. So, in my previous job, I was working with 5 people that were in wheelchairs. And the first time I actually realized that it's hard for them to live their lives as I do was when I was trying to find a hotel for an integration trip. Seems to be a very easy task in these days, but wasn't. It was mission almost impossible. Because they called an accessible hotel the one with just one room, and 5 people cannot fit one room when there is just one bed. Another thing was recently when I was discussing this presentation with one friend who is using a screen reader on a daily basis, and he told me a very important and interesting thing. I asked him to point out websites that are actually wrongly made, because I wanted to use them as an example. And he said that actually he avoids them. And since there is so plenty of bad websites, he only uses the ones that are good. And I thought, why does he need to choose websites that he wants to use? It's kind of unfair, right? And according to a theory of social disability, this disability is constructed and created by us, by me, for instance, because according to this, society is constructed by and for non-disabled people, and whoever cannot fit this is considered disabled. And there is a very easy example. According to medical model of disability, whenever a person cannot climb stairs, it means that it's something wrong with this person, not with the stairs, and that this person needs to be cured. And on the contrary, the social model of disability says that it's actually something wrong with those stairs. Why don't they build ramp? And I kind of like this idea. Then I keep asking myself a question: why not create solutions that are good for everyone, that are equal, so that we can all use digital products we create in the same way? I was very often told that internet opened up the world for everybody, and that's a myth. Because maybe it was like that when we started using the internet, when it was still simple. But now, while creating all those fancy designs, animations, choosing colors that actually are not usable but rather pretty, we tend to forget about usability for everyone. And, I was wondering about some situations that come, for instance, in my life, and I think we can relate them to also all of us. So have you ever tried using an app in a full sunlight on a bus, or while having your holidays in some warm country? Maybe you were scheduling an appointment with a doctor while holding a baby, or maybe you were trying to submit some complicated paperwork in a governmental app or in a bank, and it was probably a nightmare. Or have you ever tried, out of curiosity, browsing your company's website with a screen reader to make sure whether someone can access it? Or very common situation, probably at least once in your life you forgot your headphone and you really wanted to watch a video, for instance, while preparing for a presentation like here. Those situations prove for me that accessibility concerns all of us, that it's not only about disabled people. We tend to narrow it down to disabled people. And those guidelines that show us how to make products usable and how to make them nice for everyone, it concerns all of us. And here comes the explanation for me. It all happens just because we are all diverse. And we have various needs, all of us. And they not only come from types of disability, but they come because of our socioeconomic backgrounds, and the way we use internet and all digital products really depends, for instance, how much we earn or how much our parents were earning. It depends on the cultures and when we were born. It depends on gender, because our brains are constructed in a different way, male and female. It depends obviously on our abilities, and it also very much depends on our ages. Just because when we get older, we perceive information a bit slower and we need more time to understand and to remember stuff. So we have a choice. all of us, and you mostly, we can design for some people or for all. Choice is yours. Here come some other practical examples. You can take a look at that second example, which is considered to be good according to accessibility guidelines. So small differences, but changing contrast in colors or making font a little bit larger helps not only people who have some eye strains or some visual impairment, but also people who, for instance, read a lot throughout the day. Small thing to do in your digital product. Or typical situation that I already mentioned, forgetting your headphones. What helps you then? Transcriptions. But obviously it also help deaf people. Another thing that sometimes maybe is annoying, for instance, for me, but then I kind of understand that any kind of cognitive impairments make us understand the text a bit slower, and we need more time to remember it. And it relates not only to elderly people, but some people simply struggle reading or remembering. And we can do a simple thing, add some more thorough onboarding, maybe some more written documentation, add some more push-up notifications to help those people understand what we want to communicate to them. And a simple situation that not only that relates to many people, for instance, with small hands, or for people that are using their second hand, for instance, for holding a baby or a bag. Bigger button. Simple as that, you can just make it bigger, and then it makes the navigation in the app easier. I wanted to prove with those simple examples that accessibility guidelines didn't come out of nowhere. They are the answer to actual needs, to real needs of all diverse people in the world. And introducing them, implementing them in all digital products we create is the first but very important step to reducing barriers that many people face in this world, in the digital world. Accessibility guidelines is part of the whole big mindset, which is inclusive design mindset, that you've may probably heard about already. Inclusive design says that you are not designing one thing for all, but you're designing a diversity of ways for everyone to participate in your solution, to participate in this experience. And accessibility guidelines is part of this mindset. But what I'm telling about accessibility guidelines, because I know that implementing the whole inclusive design process in our products, in teams where we work, is sometimes quite difficult because it requires taking a step back sometimes and overthinking the reason why we created the digital product. So at least we can take accessibility guidelines and start implementing them in products, whatever stage of the development it is. And since these accessibility guidelines are that important, I want you to remember that even making a small change for a minority of people will make it easier for everyone who uses the app, and will make it easier for everyone who uses this app to use it, actually, because the accessibility guidelines improve the overall experience, user experience. And this is what counts. We want people to use the products that we create. And believe me or not, accessibility guidelines is definitely a new source for creativity. And I guess you like it. Ideally, in ideal world, the accessibility and inclusive design work together just to make experiences that are not only compliant to standards and law, but truly usable for everyone. And you may already know that in some countries, including Poland, we have to implement some accessible solutions, for instance, NGOs and public institutions in Poland. But why not do this before we are enforced by law? I'm pretty sure that it's going to get more restrictive. Probably you already know that it is quite restrictive in the United States, for instance. I believe that once we understand the reasons why accessibility matters, then it's kind of easier for us to implement it, because everything starts in our mind. And when we have a negative approach to something, then we are really not willing to do something. But if we change thinking, then we actually find things much more easier. So you can ask yourself a question: what issues those guidelines aim to solve? So where they came from, what I tried to already tell you and present to you. Then you can think of what your design team can do to address those issues. Even if these are small things, it's still fine. And then, obviously, you can think of how can I actually change the product's look and feel to make it usable for the broadest group of people, so that no one feels excluded. And I want to ensure you that you got the power. You get the power to do all of this just because you have right tools, you have a lot of knowledge, and you have a lot of self-esteem very often, and you're very lucky because you participate in designing process very often from the very beginning up until very end of creating the digital solution. You have tools that I have no idea about, only maybe I know their names, like Figma. But I'm a customer success manager. And I don't implement accessibility my own because I'm not a designer, but I've been through trainings and I know it from a theory, and the only thing I can do is that I can share this with other people. But you can start designing things that matter for everyone. And as a designer, you actually have kind of responsibility of creating things that matter, because you create interactions for all the people. And when it's inclusive, when it's with this accessibility mindset, with this inclusive mindset in your mind, then we can create technology that serves everybody. As I mentioned already, very often, at least I perceive it like this, that you take part in many different steps of the project. Not every time, but very often. You have a chance to participate in scoping, in workshops very often, and this is the first time you can tell your clients or the clients you work for at the companies that accessibility actually matters, and why not have it included in the digital product you're going to create. You participate, obviously, you do wireframes and mockups, then you create design systems, you very often provide developers with some instructions because you simply have to give them the designs and all the components, and then very often you participate in testing, evaluating their work. It all means that in each of these stages, you can have accessibility in mind. Obviously, it also requires a lot of knowledge from you, because you have to get knowledge from many different areas that are not strictly related to design, because accessibility relates also to UX writing, so you have to know what to put on those buttons, what to put on those inputs, and how to write alternative text, probably. Then sometimes you need a little bit of coding skills, because you have to forward everything to developers, or sometimes you need to tell them what is important in terms of accessibility. And then sometimes you also take part in creating documentation. And I know that it all sounds quite overwhelming, it's a lot of stuff, but believe me, everything starts in our minds, and everything starts with our mindset. As an example, I would like to show you the case of our client, because obviously it would be easier if we start every digital product, working on each digital product with accessibility in mind. It is easier because you can start with this and you don't need to recreate, redesign, redevelop, rewrite the code. But not always we have a chance to do so. But you can have an approach as our client did, Pet Media Group. They have a product that was created in the very beginning without accessibility guidelines in their mind. But there were a few changes recently, both in our team, on our side, but also in client's team. For instance, the product owner has changed, and the designer on our side has changed. And it occurred that all of them actually consider accessibility as a very important thing when it comes to their platform. So since they also decided to do the rebranding, they thought, yeah, it's a good time to implement accessibility. But obviously, it's kind of risky for each business to do everything at once, to wait for the whole platform to be accessible. This is why they decided to implement changes iteratively. And we started with adapting color system to accessibility, because the redesign was already made by another designer. And we made it. It's possible, and it's done by one of the designers that is actually sitting here. Then we obviously started adjusting fonts, inputs, all the visuals of the platform. But you know what? We don't implement it at once right now. We are implementing those changes step by step. And this is how it looked like. This is how it looks like, this design right now, with all those accessibility annotations that you can see. This is what developers already implement. And they are provided also with an instruction in which they can always find some kind of hint. And we didn't create this instruction all by us. You can find a very cool template to do it with some help. We also took a critical look at our website, at TSH's website, when we went through a training, accessibility training. And obviously it occurred that it's not fully accessible. But we could say, okay, it doesn't matter in our industry, but it does matter. This is why we also decided to start redesigning it a little bit and adjusting to accessibility guidelines. And I find it a huge step, the decision to make it. It's not a piece of cake, but it's all doable. And I know that businesses that you work for, clients that you work with, will always come with some objections. And the first one is always deadline. But we obviously know that deadlines always come. And you can tell your clients, yeah, but Rome wasn't built at once. And you don't have to do everything at once. You can do it iteratively, divide it into parts, because it's better to make it step by step rather than not make it at all. Then another thing that usually comes when you don't know what it is about, then it's always about money. And they always come saying that, yeah, but we don't have any more budget to implement accessibility. We actually and they keep telling that there is no time, there is no budget, we love it. But I can assure you that accessibility improves the UX of the website, which means that because of that, you will get more users. And if you're paid for this, then you get more revenue. So this investment pays off. And also, Google Lighthouse has accessibility as one of the metrics, which means that you are higher in the search engine optimization, which pays off as well because you don't have to spend that much money on marketing, for instance. And you can communicate all those arguments to business because you are there in the whole process. And then another thing, clients very often come to us and say, yeah, I want to do it this way. And you say, no, it doesn't make sense. So now you can change roles a little bit and they may say, yeah, accessibility doesn't make sense. But you can say, yeah, it does make sense. But you need to know why it actually makes sense. This is why I'm telling you a few arguments. But I believe that you can tell your clients, for instance, that, yeah, do you want for your business good or bad reputation? And I'm sure they will say, we want good reputation. This is why they should care about accessibility and make their brand outstanding. And accessibility on their digital products definitely make their brand outstanding. Also, marketing, social marketing is very important right now. And they can obviously publish the information about accessible products. And obviously, we know sometimes fights between designers and developers, fights, of course, like this. And you can say, yeah, I'm trying to do it all in an accessible way, but then developers don't care. Yeah, but you can tell them, do you actually want your products to be used by people, or do you want to do it with ignorance so that it is just somehow hanging in the internet? And I think the answer is clear. They want to do products that are used by people. And last but not least, sometimes you say, yeah, but I don't have enough experience and I don't have enough knowledge to make it all come true. But there is just one comment from my side on this. Let the one who has never made a mistake cast the stone first. And I definitely think that in the end, you can make it or break it. And I believe that knowing accessibility guidelines doesn't mean you will know more, because the more we try to learn, the less we know. But it means that you will ignore less. Thank you.